Staggering number of ancient temples in the order of tens of thousands across hinterlands of India are in ruins due to mismanagement, abandoned due to lack of resources and sheer neglect, increasing urbanization and migration of people from rural hinterlands to the cities. Temples which were once cultural melting pot in ancient times are crying out for attention in modern times. Before we go ahead, let's look at the importance of temples in our ancient times and understand why our ancestors built so many of them across the length and breadth of this country. Temples played a pivotal role in enforcing a sense of civilizational unity across Bharata. Cultural renaissance in many parts of India can be traced back to the temples of that part. For example, the land surrounding the temples were used as a space for sculpture artists to carry out their beautiful artwork. Wrestlers used to practice with their peers. Folk artists used to perform. Places where art forms such as dance, cultural music flourished. Take the example of Purandaradasa, the father of Carnatic classical music and author of thousands of kirtanas. He is believed to have composed his entire work sitting next to Virupaksha temple in Hampi in the erstwhile Vijayanagara kingdom. Temples also acted like banks for merchants who were trading across Indian Ocean from Southeast Asia to Middle East. Let's draw an analogy with the current times for better understanding. Let's say we are bored and we have some time to kill. What do we normally do? We usually take our friends and family and visit the nearby restaurants to eat, malls to shop, and movie halls to catch the latest flick. Well, in the ancient times, there was none of this. During those times, temples were the place where people came to worship, enjoy the cultural art forms of those times. In other words, temples used to be the malls and movie theaters of our ancient times, thereby enforcing a strong sense of community at a village level. Now let's understand, why did the kings donate huge swaths of surrounding land to the temples? Kings in the ancient times had the vision that for any ecosystem to flourish and be relevant over a time period, it has to be made self-sufficient. What does it mean? Let's say there was a small repair work that had to be done at the temples. Temple could rent its surrounding land for a local event for a short period of time and use the generated revenue to carry out the repair work, thereby reducing the dependency on the state for financial needs and be self-sustaining. Now let's move few hundred years later and see what transpired in 1925 during British rule. British government decided to take over the governance of day-to-day affairs of temple in Madras Presidency, which pretty much covered almost all the temples in the entire South India. Let's not forget that by this time, the North Indian ancient Hindu temples and the Hindu cultural ecosystem was under rapid decline due to hundreds of years of invasions from the Arab and Turkish world. Even the famous temples of Kashi, Mathura and Ayodhya no longer stood ground, as we already know. With the intervention of British, the temple ecosystem slowly started breaking down. But however, the worst was yet to come. In 1951 and in later 1959, after independence, a new legislation was brought in by the government called as Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowment Act, which essentially allowed the government to take over the control of the entire temple ecosystem. Huge swaths of temple land no longer belonged to the temple, but were transferred to government departments. Temples had to depend on government for its day-to-day operations. A similar act is in place across major parts of India with different names. For example, Mujurai department in Karnataka has similar laws, as compared to Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowment Act of Tamil Nadu. Now let's try to understand why is this issue important. Let us explain this in multiple parts. The government completely stripped the temples of its ability to self-sustain, and it took over the land. It also started controlling the financial day-to-day operation of over 100,000 plus temples across South India. However, the monumental task of maintaining and preserving these massive number of temples proved to be too daunting for obvious reasons, coupled with apathy and neglect. What were the effects? This neglect and abandonment of ancient temples led to illegal encroachment of temple land. Point number two, stealing and subsequent smuggling of ancient idols in abandoned temples and its further transport across the black markets of the world. Let's look at some of the examples of illegal encroachment. These pictures are pictures of Nijagal Hill Temple near Tumkur, just couple of hours of drive from Bangalore. It's a very ancient temple, completely abandoned and is in ruins right now. Take a look at the new religious structure that is coming up on the same temple complex. Take a look at the cemetery that is coming up right in front of Manimurteshwara Uchishta Ganapati Temple, Tirunelveli. These are some of the few examples. There are hundreds of examples across South India where there has been an illegal encroachment of the temple land. Coming to the second point, stealing and further smuggling of ancient murtis and idols from these abandoned temples and its transport across the black markets of the world. It is estimated that in Tamil Nadu alone, this racket has made away with more than 1200 ancient idols in the past 25 years, in collusion with cartels of international smugglers. There have been instances where idols were taken out directly from the Garbhagudi, or the sanctum sanctorum of the temple, or also in many cases directly from the strong rooms of the government in which these idols were stored. There have been many examples where the strong rooms were secured with locks worth of 50 rupees. In other words, people in power thought that the best way to secure all our priceless heritage assets is to store it in a room and lock it with a 50 rupees lock. A simple Google search on idol smuggling would throw up lot of material and information for further reading. A single case in Tamil Nadu alone, where a bunch of idols which were recovered were estimated to be worth more than 50 crore. Although in recent times government has started taking some measures to tackle this menace, it is too little and might be too late. For example, take a look at this report. One man has been assigned the task of counting and inventorying all the idols, over lakh of them, in Tamil Nadu alone. That is 37,000 temples of Tamil Nadu. It just goes to show how complacent we have been when it comes to protecting our heritage and our identity. Now let's talk about one of the most important topic, which is about the government controlled temples and why we think the time has come to set our Indian temples free from the government control. First, India is declared as a secular state in its constitution, which means government should treat all the religious institutions equally. But the government interferes only in the affairs of Hindu religion, thereby fundamentally going against the very constitution that it should uphold. Take a look at the below table and see the difference between the state attitude towards the Hindu temples as against the places of worship of other communities. This report by Swarajya captures the details from all possible vantage points. Now let's talk about some of the shocking outcomes of such discriminatory laws against Hindus and their temples. Point number one, collection from temples in some of the states have been regularly routed to the development of places of worship of other communities. Point number two, in 1980s, the Kerala government ordered the Guruvayur temple to deposit over 10 crore rupees with the state treasury to offset the government deficit. Whether this money was ever returned or not is uncertain. In addition, the temple land holdings were decimated from 13,000 acres to 230 acres by the Land Reforms Act, which conveniently excluded non-Hindu institutions. In Tamil Nadu, the HR&C department controls over 4.7 lakh acres of agricultural land, 2.6 crore square feet of buildings, and 29 crore square feet of urban land of temples. By any reasonable measures, the income from these properties should be in thousands of crores of rupees. The government, however, collects a mere 36 crores in rent against the demand of over 300 plus crores. This is just 12% realization. Point number four, the neglect of temples is even more heartbreaking. Numerous are the instances where ancient murals and paintings are whitewashed, mandapams are demolished, and walls are sandblasted, causing precious inscriptions to disappear. While the government eventually issues notifications acknowledging the errors of such senseless acts, the damage is already done in the form of violations. There are running rackets in smuggling of exquisite ancient sculptures abroad. Several ancient temples of immense religious and heritage value are literally crumbling to the ground for lack of maintenance. The collapse of Temple Tower of famous Kalahasti temple in Andhra Pradesh few years ago comes to mind. Point number 5. Government interference in temple affairs facilitates conversions. With traditional temple ecosystem broken down, we have seen many examples recently where the temple management board set up by the government has been infiltrated by non-Hindus, thereby encouraging religious conversions in the local ecosystem. Point number 6. Temples lose real estate. With government intervention, in some cases, the land owned by temples in surrounding areas have been conveniently handed over to other government wings such as revenue department, which is in turn used to generate other forms of revenue for the government, whereas the temples, which was the original owner of the land, has been forced to depend on the government for even minuscule expenditure such as minor repair works. Many embarrassing current practices in the form of temples such as darshan queues based on money are some of the ways government has tried to generate more revenue, which was unheard of in ancient times. Read up on this topic using the references provided in the credit section of the video. I hope you like this video. Please share and spread the word. Thank you.